Welcome everyone to a new episode of Out from the Horrorbox. Now, what do we have here today for you guys? Well, something a little extra spooky from the year 2014. Before I get into it, though, thank you guys for listening, tuning in, and for everyone out there who has stuck around. Hopefully, you have. Thank you. I understand that it's been here and there with the episodes, but hopefully I'll get to back to a regular schedule. The past few months have just been a little rough, adjusting to new schedules and things like that. So hopefully now it'll be a little bit better. And I'm also going to change things up. So before each episode, for a review, I'll probably get into a new story or maybe something else just to kind of, ease you guys in a little bit. So first we got from ladbible.com, Britain's most haunted street where residents had to sign a waiver before moving in. A British street plagued by poltergeist activity is so haunted that a new resident was forced to sign a waiver before moving in. Wingates Grove and West Houghton, on the outskirts of Bolton, was said to be haunted by an evil spirit throughout the 1990s. It apparently became so bad that Bolton Council had to step in and try to get to the bottom of what was going on, but they never reached a solid conclusion. An exorcism was later carried out, which appeared to put an end to the poltergeist activity once and for all. But 7 years later, in 2006, a new resident to the street was made to sign a waiver promising she wouldn't use a Ouija board or perform any other type of black magic at the address. The paranormal experiences first started back in 1993 when one family reported a series of inexplicable occurrences. They said their young son would talk to a little man in his bedroom and an oil-like substance would drip down the walls. Okay, that's creepy. Eventually, the family got in touch with a local church and they sent out an exorcist. Following the exorcism, the spooky goings-on stopped, but 5 years later, in 1999, they picked up again, and this time 2 doors down. Former resident Laura, who was 12 at the time, said she felt something was wrong with the property as soon as the family arrived. Speaking to the Manchester Evening News, she said, "I begged my mom not to move in. I didn't like the feel of it. I didn't feel comfortable, but then when we got our stuff in, it faded a bit. When things started happening, my mom would say it was a ghost of my granddad, but I said it wasn't. I just knew there was something there. It felt like I was walking into someone's personal space. I didn't want to walk through the door." Laura, now 34, said she remembers the first spooky incident like it was yesterday. She said she had been with her older brother and had decided to play a prank on their other friend who was sleeping over. As they ran back upstairs, her brother let out a blood-curdling scream. He had cut his foot open on a picture frame that was standing on the staircase. It had been hanging on the wall just moments before and had not fallen down. We literally just walked up on the stairs, and if it fell, it wouldn't stand up. If he stood on it, it would have slipped. It was like a force of holding it in place. That was one of the first scary things that happened. Other incidents, including dozens of dead crows scattered around the garden, a foul sulfur smell that would fill the property, and the same oil-like substance the neighbors found trickling down the walls, also occurred. Laura also heard ghostly footsteps, and her young nephew would chat away to the big guy while he sat in an empty room. Laura moved out when she was 16, but says the spooky experiences have lived with her ever since. "I don't watch any scary films or anything to do with ghosts," Laura added. "I've suffered with anxiety since to the point where holding about the street is on my doctor's note. The last 5 months we lived there, I slept in a bed with my mom and dad because it was that scared. That's when things got really bad. I kept seeing people sit at the door. I fell asleep facing my wall because I was terrified of turning over. If I needed to go to the toilet at night, I would hold on." Karen Walton, who now lives in Laura's childhood home, says she has no problem with the property's history and actually enjoys its quirky past. She purchased the home in 2006 and says she has had to sign a disclaimer before she moved in to the address. She was told that she was not allowed to move into the home if she had young children. I understand there's something going on there. He used to jump up from there to the house next door to here. I had to sign a disclaimer saying I wouldn't use a Ouija board or do black magic or anything dark. They wanted me to sign a simple paper. I quite liked it. I've heard tales that there's meant to be an old man walking around the landing. They're quite happy here. I think it's quite novel. Quite like it. It's a selling point for me. Karen says she hasn't experienced any supernatural activity since moving in. Which, I mean, to Laura's point, like my family has been followed around by ghosts all my life, all their lives, from the house that we moved from California to over here in Arizona, but it's been kind of on and off here and there. We still see things, hear things, so I do believe it does kind of travel around with you, that sometimes it's not just one place, it is the people that they are hunting. And, you know, to kind of segue from that and into something following, let's get into today's review, and that is the 2014 American supernatural psychological horror film written and directed by David Robert Mitchell. It follows.
I used to daydream about being old enough to go on dates. I had this image of myself holding hands with a really cute guy, driving along some pretty road. It was never about going anywhere, really. Just having some sort of freedom, I guess.
Jay, you awake?
What are you doing?
You're not gonna believe me, and I need you to remember what I'm saying. This thing, it's gonna follow you. Somebody gave it to me, and I passed it to you.
Wherever you are, it's somewhere walking straight for you. All you can do is pass it along to someone else.
I'm scared. I need to find him.
What did he really do to you?
Apparently, he used a fake name to rent a house in the city.
This isn't real, I swear to you, this is just some game. If it kills her, it gets me and goes straight down the line to whoever started it.
What exactly is supposed to be following you?
I don't know.
Something happened. It's not what she thinks, okay?
You don't believe me. Mom?
No, it's me. Everything's okay.
It could look like someone you know, or it could be a stranger in a crowd. Whatever helps it get close to you.
A young girl named Annie flees from her house in fear, but there is no visible threat. She takes her parents' car and drives to the beach, where she tearfully tells her dad over the phone she loves him. By dawn, it is revealed that she had been brutally murdered. Jamie J. Height, an Oakland University student, goes on a date with her new boyfriend, Hugh, to the movies. Hugh points out a young girl in the back of the theater. When Jay says she cannot see the girl, Hugh becomes unnerved and asks that they leave. On another date, Hugh and Jay have sex in his car, but afterwards he incapacitates Jay with chloroform, and she wakes up tied to a wheelchair. Hugh explains that he has passed an entity onto her through intercourse. It will perpetually be walking towards Jay's location at all times, no matter where she is. If it catches Jay, it will kill her and pursue the previous person to have passed it on, Hugh, who is passing it to Jay as leverage. Hugh's claims are proven real when a naked woman appears and walks straight for Jay. Hugh drives Jay home and flees. The next day, the police cannot find the naked woman or Hugh, who is living under a false identity. At school, Jay sees an old woman in a hospital gown walking towards her, invisible to others. Jay's sister Kelly and her friends Paul Baldwin and Yara Davis agree to help and spend the night in Jay and Kelly's house. That night, someone smashes the kitchen window. Paul investigates but sees no one. Inside the house, Jay sees a disheveled, urinating, half-naked woman walking toward her and runs upstairs to the others, who cannot see the entity. When a tall man enters the bedroom, Jay flees the house, her friends catching up to her at a nearby playground. With the help of their neighbor, Greg Hannigan, the group discovers Hugh's real name, Jeff Redmond, and traces him to his address. Jeff's mother answers the door, and Jay realizes that the naked woman she had seen coming for her in the Packard plant was in the form of Mrs. Redmond. Jeff explains that the entity began pursuing him after a one-night stand and that Jay can pass it on by having sex with someone else. Greg drives Jay, Kelly, Yara, and Paul to his family's lake house and teaches Jay to shoot a revolver. The entity arrives in the form of Yara and attacks Jay on the lakefront. Jay's friends ward it off by breaking a chair over its body, and Jay shoots it several times until it falls over. But it recovers unharmed and attacks, this time taking the form of a boy who lives next door to Jay. She flees in Greg's car, crashes into a cornfield, and wakes up in a hospital with a broken arm. Greg has sex with Jay in the hospital as he does not believe the entity exists. Days later, Jay sees the entity in the form of Greg walking towards Greg's house, smashing a window at Greg's house and entering. Jay tries to warn the real Greg by telephone, but he does not answer. She runs into the house and finds the entity in the form of Greg's half-naked mother knocking on his door before it jumps on Greg. Jay sees the entity having sex with a dead Greg, then flees by car and spends the night outdoors. On a beach, Jay sees 3 young men on a boat. She then undresses and walks into the water. Back home, Paul, willing to take the risk, offers Jay the opportunity to pass it on to him, but she refuses. The group plans to kill the entity by luring it into a swimming pool and dropping an electrical appliance to the water. Jay, waiting on the pool, spots the entity and realizes it has taken the appearance of her deceased father. Instead of entering the pool, it throws the devices at her. Firing at an invisible target, Paul accidentally wounds Yara but shoots the entity in the head. They then cover it with a sheet, and Paul shoots it once more, causing it to fall into the pool. As Jay tries to get out of the pool, it pulls her underwater by the ankle. Paul shoots it again in the head and it sinks to the bottom, allowing Jay to escape. She approaches the pool and sees it filling with blood. Jay and Paul have sex. That night, Paul drives through town passing sex workers. Later, Jay and Paul walk down the street holding hands as a figure walks behind them. So first, let's get into a little bit about this. So, writer-director David Robert Mitchell conceived the film based on a recurring dream he had in his youth about being followed. He said, "I didn't use those images for the film, but the basic idea and the feeling I used. From what I understand, it's an anxiety dream. Whatever I was going through at the time, my parents divorced when I was around that age, so I imagine it was something to do with that. The role that sexual transmission played came later from Mitchell's desire for something that could transfer between people." He started writing the film in 2011 while working on a separate film he intended to be his second feature. However, Mitchell struggled with the would-be second feature and made It Follows his next film instead. Mitchell realized that the concept he was working on was tough to describe and thus refused to discuss the plot when asked what he was working on, reasoning later, "When you say it out loud, it sounds like the worst thing ever." It was shot in late 2013 in Detroit, Michigan. Mitchell used wide-angle lenses when filming to give the film an expansive look, which you can kind of see. He cited the works of George Romero and John Carpenter as influences on the film's compositions and visual aesthetics, and you can see that. Like, that's why I think I really liked this film when it came out, is because you could tell that it pulled a lot from these like 80s films. The way I describe it is, and this was right after seeing the film for the first time, was like if John Carpenter directed A Nightmare on Elm Street. It has that same type of visual look, but like that feeling that you get from like a nightmare, and like that, and that's, I mean, obviously that's where he kind of based it off of, was coming from a nightmare, and you get that sense. It's that like dread of like not understanding what's going on, but it's enough that you're familiar with it. And you just feel that dread through the movie that's just building from the beginning, where it starts off, the girl, she's just running around, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And then even when Hugh, like, they're in the theater, and he's like, oh, you see that girl in the yellow? And then she's like, no, and it completely freaks him out. And just going on and on and on. And even just, like, the ambiance of the whole film, just things here and there, and you just can't really set the film in a specific year. I mean, there's things that make it seem like, oh, it's now, but then there's some things, like some technology that's like, what? And then like the TV sets that they use and the cars that they're driving, it's like, so wait, so is it set years ago? And then I think that adds to that like dream logic type feel that he was going for, but it works really well for this film. And I will say that as soon as I saw this film and the score is amazing. I love it. It's from Rich Virlin, who's better known as Disasterpiece, and honestly, like, it's probably one of my favorite like soundtracks of all time for a movie. Just like, I love that, like, it just sounds like it's just building and dread filled, and like just every single song off of it for each time, like, it's amazing. I will say that this is an amazing score for this film, and honestly, like, I wish Disasterpiece would do more, because honestly, it's like, I was so tempted, and I am still tempted to buy just like the vinyl of the soundtrack, because it's just amazing. It debuted at the 2014 Cannes Film Festival and was later distributed by Radius TWC for distribution. Had a limited release back in March of 2015. Had the wide release later in the month of 2015 and received critical acclaim. Praise was directed at the film's originality and Monroe's performance. It grossed $23.3 million worldwide against a $1.3 million budget. And honestly, I would credit this one along with, I would say, The Witch and like and It, in kind of getting that ball moving, and well, obviously anything from A24 to us appreciating or horror films the way that we do now. Like, they're not seen as like, I mean, some are still seen as just cheesy fodder for whatever, to be fun and not really think about. But now you also have those that are like also like Get Out and Us, that are highly esteemed, and then like The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro, and look at Nightmare Alley. It's also, that was nominated for Best Picture this year, and Guillermo del Toro lives in the realm of horror. And so I think that this kind of helped to move our perception, and especially with critics, to think like, oh, you know what, these films actually might be pretty good. They might be worth something. And it's like, well, yeah, we've always said that. One thing is that there might be a possible sequel that was brought up by the president of Radius TCW, our co-president, Tom Quinn. He said he was looking into a possible sequel. Quinn has expressed the idea of flipping the concept of the first film around, with Jamie or another protagonist going down the chain to find the origin of it. I don't know. I mean, I like the idea. If it is David Robert Mitchell coming back, then okay, maybe. But if it's just gonna be like, if all there's two Electric Boogaloo, then no, I don't think so. I think I'd pass. It would have to be like a really good story again for it to work. But let's get into a little bit of trivia. So one thing that David Robert Mitchell did was, in the background of certain scenes involving crowds, there are some people seemingly walking slowly in view towards Jay and her friends. This is to give the viewers a sense of anxiety over the possibility of any of those people being the entity. So not only do the set props prevent the viewer from placing the year, the clothing prevents the viewer from placing the time of year also. Throughout the film's short duration, clothing ranges from coats, jackets, t-shirts, and swimsuits during the day to barely anything at all at night, all outdoors with no signs of discomfort. Which, as I had said earlier, that's one great thing about this film is that you can't really place it, right? The time period. The colors of red or pink are used to foreshadow the upcoming appearance of it, as they appear either in the background or on a character's piece of clothing whenever it attacks. Now I gotta watch out for that because I did not know that. And director David Robert Mitchell said that neither a condom nor same-gender sex would stop the monster and the curse would still be passed. So anyone who's trying to find a loophole there, nope. So there was some debate on whether or not Jay either had sex with the three men on the boat or not. Some people think she did and was spared a little longer from the entity. Others think she ultimately didn't because the entity had later easily caught back up with her during the climactic showdown at the abandoned public pool. The scene was left unexplained as part of the film's nature. And that's what I always thought too. I was like, well, if she did, I assume it can just, it just would have caught up to those people and killed them. I bet. And as some people try to, work a way around it, David Robert Mitchell did say that in an interview that the monster could potentially board a plane in order to follow the cursed person. So it could, figure out where you are and get on a plane that was going to the same place as you and eventually get to you again, which I think makes it even scarier. Because I feel because when the thing is in the water, it's just walking through the water. It feels like it doesn't need to breathe. So I feel like, yeah, you could move, let's just say, you could move across, to an island, but I feel like it would still just keep following you. It would just keep going. There's nothing that's going to stop it from going. And, that's what kind of makes this a little bit terrifying more. Because you just never know. It'll be there. Eventually, it's going to get you. So what are my personal thoughts? I love this movie. As soon as it came out on Blu-ray and DVD, I bought it. I have it on Blu-ray. I saw the movie in theaters with my friend, and I loved it because it gave me everything I think I wanted in a film. It's dreamlike. It makes you wonder about things. It's very ambiguous. There's not a lot of explaining about this or that. The monster is creative. The story is creative. The acting is great. The music is amazing. It starts off right away. Bam. Gets you in there. Doesn't try to do anything crazy. And overall, there's just this movie is just so great. I highly recommend it. If you haven't watched it, you're listening to this. While you're listening to this, go watch it. But beyond that, it's just I just love when someone takes cues from a previous director or directors, and they are oh, well, this is what I love about their film style. This is what I love about their writing style. This is what I love about this, that, right? The way that they can make you feel. And this, like I said, it made me feel like if John Carpenter was directing A Nightmare on Elm Street. And because you can tell, David Robert Mitchell really did take a lot of the cinematography from Carpenter. And you can tell that a lot of the, dreamlike quality that, comes from it, especially, explaining to, because he picked Disaster Piece for a reason, right? And there's scenes in A Nightmare on Elm Street where the music just makes you feel like this is some weird nightmare you're in. And that's exactly what, Wes Craven was going for, right? Because it's a Nightmare on Elm Street. And David Robert Mitchell is exactly going for that same thing. And I feel like the music pulls you in and lulls you in, and then it makes you feel like we're in a place that we shouldn't be. And then just the scenarios, and then like I said, the props and the attire, it just all throws you for a loop because you're when is this? Who are when is this supposed to be? where is this supposed to be? It's just somewhere in America. And these characters are aloof, too, of, like, they don't even really believe it because they can't see it. And it's crazy that it's, like, this idea of, like, this thing that only you can see, and it makes you feel like you're going crazy, right? And only one other person knows about it, or the only other person who knows about it is someone you've had sex with, and it's like, well, you're just saying that because of this or that. And it's like, no, like, they are seeing this horrible monstrosity that looks like another dead relative. Or, like, for Jay, like, the fact that, like, her dad is the one who shows up in the end, her dead dad, which you can tell, like, this is probably some past trauma that she's dealt with. Like, we kind of understand that, like, there might have been something there, not something like ridiculous, or like it might have been a little bit abusive, but obviously there's something there, that the reason why, like, it like frightened her more at the end with that, like, taking that form, I think has something too. And there's so many layers you can see to this. Like, it's just so good, just from beginning to end. It is. What I love too is that it is a little bit slow building, but oh god, I will say there's some parts to this that are just so like, just the cinematography, just the colors, everything that in the shot, it just looks so amazing. It's the scene where he has her tied up in the wheelchair, and just like the colors of the night and the colors of the concrete and the wheelchair, and him explaining everything, and the lighting that they use is just so perfect. And honestly, I could go on and on about the cinematography of this film because it is amazing. And I think that's why David Robert Mitchell, I think he should do another horror film. I don't think he should do necessarily a sequel to this. He should just do another horror film. I mean, if you haven't seen his the film after this, Under the Silver Lake, that movie is amazing. It's crazy, just like this, but, like, I feel like way more. If you don't like more surreal, more absurd, abstract things, you're not gonna like it. But Andrew Garfield gives an amazing performance, and it's so good. Like, honestly, if this wasn't just a horror movie podcast, I would review it too, because it's a really good movie, and I highly recommend it if you like this film and you like movies that aren't going to be, like, necessarily in the norm. It is a little weird and out there, but it is still really good. Back to this movie. Highly recommend it. If you go to, I think it's on Netflix. It might be on Shudder. I'm not sure. I know I've seen it on there sometimes. I wish David Robert Mitchell would make more films. It's like David Eggers. Like, David Eggers did The Witch and The Lighthouse. Knocked him out of the ballpark. And he's doing The Northman next. And I can't wait for that. And hopefully then I'll be able to review all three, because those movies are amazing unto themselves. But It Follows, I would give it like 4 out of 5 stars. From top to bottom, from acting, directing, just the writing, everything is amazing. I mean, I could just gush about it all day. I mean, just like that slow building of just like something in the background, like walking towards these characters who are oblivious of it, right? Like, they're full on having a conversation at one point in the field, and they're freaking out because this girl's walking towards them dressed in like a soccer uniform, and it's like, well, what is that it? Is that it? And, like, she just walks off, and they're freaking out, and she just looks at them and, like, kind of gives them a side eye, because it's like, what are you guys freaking out about? Because it's like, it's that, like, fear and anxiety inducing that you're like, is that it? Is that what is it coming now? And then, like, the fact that, like, only specific people can see it. Only the people you've passed it to can see it, and everyone else is there trying to help you, but like they can only help so much. It's like at the end when like he's trying to shoot it and he can't. I mean, obviously he can only like he can figure out where it is only because she's pointing in like dead space here and there, but he can't even see it. And finally he gets it, and that's when they throw the blanket over it. And that's when they're able to finally like keep shooting it till it's in the water dead. Well, quote unquote dead, because we don't even know if that even kills it. Like, because we don't even know what kills it, or can it be killed? Like, has it been around for forever? And if so, like, how? Like, isn't there some point where, like, so if like the very first person who had it, let's just say it was back in like the Roman era, right? And that person's dead. So if it kills everyone until a certain point, then does it go away? Does it come back? How does it come back? See, and these aren't questions that I want to answer. These are all just rhetorical. I don't really care if they answer them or not. That's what makes it great. That's what makes it amazing, is because you have all these questions too, but it's like that's what makes it creepier. It's like it can be anywhere, it can be anyone, it can even be someone who's still alive. You just never know, and it's just gonna keep following you. And hopefully you guys keep following me. And if you're not following me, you can find me at Horrorbox Podcast on Instagram. And I usually post every there once a month or a couple times a month. I try. I'm not great with social media, so you guys just got to bear with me. And if you want, you can DM me there. You can send me anything you want me to look at. You can, if you have anything you want me to review, or if there's any stories you got, I'd love to hear them, and I'd love to read them for everyone to hear. Or tag me in something that you guys want me to see. Like I said, it's anything horror. It could be movies, TV shows, clothing, games, books, comics, graphic novel, whatever. I love all of it. I want to talk about all of it. I want everyone who's in love with horror to come to this podcast to be engulfed in horror and, just what we love, us horror fanatics. And, also you can send me something through email too at horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com, and you can send me any stories you got through there. If there's anything in particular you want me to look at, anything you want me to review, like let me know through there. Let me know through Instagram. I'm always open to all of that. Hopefully I'll be able to get another couple episodes this month for you guys. But seeing as it's already like the middle of the month already, maybe it might just be this one and another episode. Who knows? If there's anyone else, or if there's anyone you guys want me to like bring on, if you liked my sister being on here, let me know. Maybe I can get her on again for something else. I especially want her to be on because Curse is coming out on Blu-ray next month. So hopefully I will be able to get her to come on to this for that. And till next time, guys, we'll see what comes out.